You ever had that moment when you knew something was off the second you heard it? That morning, it was the low hum of an SUV engine where no SUV should have been. I stepped out onto the porch with a mug of coffee, still in my boots and undershirt, and there they were. A slick-looking realtor in a blue blazer, talking loud into his phone, walking up my path like he owned the place. And next to him, Karen. Yeah, that Karen. Floral blouse, clipboard, and that smug smile that says, "I run this place." "We'll list it at 1.2 mil, she said, pointing at my porch. Rustic charm, total privacy. I didn't say a word, just stood there, sipping my coffee, letting the silence hit them. Karen finally noticed me and tried to cover. "Oh, I didn't think you were home, just showing the property to a potential buyer." "You mean my property?" I asked, calm like a storm cloud. She waved the clipboard. "There's been a reclassification. Technically, this cabin falls under the new Homeowner Association perimeter." That's when I laughed, not a full laugh, just enough to let her know she stepped in something deep. "You and your maps can take a hike. This land's been in my family since '53. My name's on every record that matters." The realtor, still holding his phone, mumbled something about taking exterior shots and tried to step past me. That's when I dropped the mug. It hit the porch hard and shattered. The dogs inside started barking, loud. "You take one more step, and I promise you, you'll be leaving with more than just pictures," I said. They backed off, but not far. Karen muttered something about me being aggressive and led the realtor back to their SUV, but not before she snapped a photo of the cabin on her phone. That smirk never left her face. Now, if you're wondering how it got this far, let me back up. I moved back here after my wife passed. City life didn't make sense anymore. This cabin, it's quiet, solid. Just me, the lake, and the memories. I'd been out of touch with the neighbors, not part of the HOA drama. Figured if I kept to myself, they'd leave me be. Big mistake. A week before that little real estate stunt, I noticed a white sign staked near the trailhead. Pending development review. No one asked me. No one even knocked. Turns out Karen had fast-tracked some zoning proposal with the county. She was pushing to expand the HOA boundary to preserve community standards. Her words. Mine were less polite. But here's the kicker. She claimed my property was unregistered, said the paperwork had lapsed when my wife passed. That gave her just enough wiggle room to file for a temporary claim of stewardship. You ever have someone talk about your home like it's an abandoned shed? I called the county office, got put on hold, transferred, then told I'd need to come in person and prove ownership. Not just the deed, full occupancy documentation, whatever the hell that meant. So I drove an hour to the county building, sat in a waiting room that smelled like mildew and old coffee. When I finally got to the desk, the clerk squinted at my ID like I was trying to scam her. "You got anything recent? Utility bills, property tax receipts?" "Lady, I heat with wood and pull water from a well." She sighed and handed me a form. "You'll need to submit this along with a statement of intent to reestablish residence." I stared at that piece of paper, a statement, to prove I still lived in my own damn home. Now tell me, have you ever had to ask permission to exist? When I got back, there was a sign nailed to my gatepost. "Private showing by appointment only." HOA seal at the bottom. That's when something in me snapped. And what I did next, that changed everything. I didn't sleep that night, just sat on the porch with a thermos full of coffee and a mind full of fire. That stupid sign nailed to my gate. It was more than a piece of laminated paper. It was a declaration, like Karen had planted a flag on my land and dared me to tear it down. At sunrise, I grabbed my welding torch from the shed. It hadn't seen daylight since I fixed the dock 2 summers ago, but the tank still had enough juice. I wheeled it out, sparks already dancing in my head. That gate was old steel pipe, hand-welded by my father when I was a teenager. I'd painted it red back then. The color faded over the years, but the bones were still strong. I didn't just weld it shut, I reinforced it. Extra crossbars, diagonal braces, fresh beads sealing every hinge. By the time I stepped back, sweat soaking through my shirt, that gate looked like it belonged on a military base. Then I added my own sign, big letters on a steel plate. "Private property. Entry without consent Rossi's trespass." Trespass? Arrest. No HOA logos, no legalizing, just plain English. You'd think that would be the end of it. 2 days later, I heard shouting down by the road. I walked up slow, rifle slung across my back. Not loaded, but they didn't need to know that. Karen stood on the other side of the gate, red-faced, phone in one hand, clipboard in the other. Behind her, two guys in orange vests, probably contractors, looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Are you out of your mind?" she yelled. "This is illegal obstruction." I pointed to the sign. "You're the one trespassing. You got 5 seconds to leave before I call the sheriff." She laughed, but there was a tremble in it. "Sheriff's department is already on the way." And sure enough, 15 minutes later, a black and white cruiser pulled up. Young deputy stepped out, maybe mid-20s, fresh haircut, trying to look authoritative. Karen launched into her speech before he even opened his notepad. Something about community access, fire lane violations, and how I was threatening the peace. Then he turned to me. "Sir, can you explain why the gate's been reinforced shut?" I nodded toward the sign. "Private land. She walked in here last week with a realtor and tried to sell my damn cabin. I welded the gate to make sure it doesn't happen again." He scratched his neck. "Do you have paperwork proving ownership?" I handed him a folder I'd prepared. Deed copies, tax receipts, a notarized statement from my dad dated back in '96. The kid looked it over, nodded slowly, and said the most beautiful sentence I'd heard all week. "Far as I can see, it's your land." Karen exploded. "This is outrageous! He's creating a hostile environment. That gate violates community safety guidelines." The deputy kept his tone flat. "Ma'am, this cabin isn't technically within the current association boundary, at least not on any official zoning maps I can access." She was losing it, and I loved every second. But then she did something I didn't expect. She pulled out her phone and showed him a document, a scanned map. Looked official, marked lines, highlighted areas. She zoomed in. "There was a vote last quarter," she said. "The expansion was approved unanimously. He wasn't present because he's been off-grid. That makes his lot eligible for conditional inclusion." The deputy glanced at me. "You aware of this?" I shook my head. "Never got a single notice. Never signed anything." He sighed. "Okay, that makes this messy. I'll file an incident report, but I can't enforce association claims. That's civil. You'll both have to take it up with the county." And then he left. Just like that. Like this was some minor property spat. Like I wasn't being invaded. Have you ever watched someone try to steal your life while the system shrugs? Later that night, I sat at the kitchen table staring at that scanned map Karen showed. I'd snapped a photo of it while they argued. Something about it didn't sit right. The boundaries on her version didn't match the old surveys I'd seen growing up. So I drove back into town and visited the county archives. Old building, smells like cardboard and lemon cleaner. Took me 2 hours and a $10 fee, but I got copies of the original zoning maps. Dated, yellowing, but clear as day. And guess what? My property wasn't just outside the HOA zone. It was explicitly excluded. Written in faded ink, parcel exempt from all residential subdivisions, per 1948 forestry easement. Boom. But here's where it gets tricky. That exemption was tied to a clause I didn't fully understand, something about non-transferable governance rights. Which meant, if someone proved the land wasn't actively occupied or claimed, the association could file for limited control. And suddenly it made sense. Why Karen rushed that fake real estate tour. Why she claimed I wasn't living there. Why she had that appointment-only sign ready to go. She was trying to prove I was gone. Have you ever been erased on purpose? That night, I pulled out an old camcorder, dusted it off, and hit record. I filmed the cabin, the gate, the signs, me splitting wood, me feeding the dogs, me flipping through photo albums with my wife's name stitched on the cover. Because if Karen wanted to pretend I didn't exist, I'd make damn sure the world saw I was still here. And the way I planned to use that footage, well, that's where it all turns. It took me 3 nights to piece together that footage. My hands aren't what they used to be, and editing on that old laptop felt like carving marble with a spoon. But by the end of the week, I had something that worked. 5 minutes of truth. Me lighting the wood stove, sitting with my dog on the porch, the sun rising over the lake, my boots beside the door, my name carved into the beam above the fireplace, done with a knife when I was 17. Then I cut in the sign Karen nailed to my gate, the realtor walking up my path, her voice clear as day. We'll list it at 1.2 mil. And finally, me looking straight into the lens. No anger, just steel. This is my home, and I'm not going anywhere. I uploaded the video to a local group board, the kind where people post lost dogs and bake sale flyers. Captioned it, "To whom it may concern." That's it. Didn't expect much. But that night, something strange happened. My phone buzzed, then again, then 20 more times. A woman I hadn't talked to in years, Ellie from the hardware store, sent me a message. "Is this really happening?" And then a guy named Dennis, who runs the bait shop across the county line. "They tried to claim your cabin? Are they nuts?" And then the kicker, a direct message from a woman named Monica. Said she used to work in the HOA admin office, 2 towns over. Said she'd seen this exact kind of move before. Called it quiet capture, a tactic where they push property into the HOA through silence, red tape, and assumed neglect. She told me they never do it unless someone inside thinks there won't be a fight. And that's when it hit me. Karen thought I was done fighting. The next morning, I found 3 cars parked just outside the gate. Locals, curious ones. One of them, an older guy in suspenders and a veteran's cap, waved at me. "Mind if I take a picture of that sign, friend? My son's got a place like this in Montana. Said his HOA's been sniffing around too." I nodded. "Take all the pictures you want. Just don't step over the line." He grinned. "Wouldn't dream of it." But not everyone was smiling. Around noon, a black SUV rolled up, and out stepped Karen. No clipboard this time. Just a manila folder in one hand and rage in her eyes. She marched up to the gate, ignoring the sign entirely. "Whatever little circus you're trying to start, stop it." I leaned on the fence. "Afraid of a camera, Karen? You're misrepresenting the association, spreading misinformation. People are calling the office. It's harassment." I didn't answer, just pointed to the trail cam now strapped to a post near the gate. "You keep showing up, you'll be the one explaining things to the sheriff." She stepped closer, voice low. "You think you're clever, but you don't understand how these things work. People get tired. Systems grind you down. You'll fold like the rest." That got to me, not the threat, but the tone, like I was just another checkbox she hadn't ticked off yet. I clenched the wire with both hands, kept my voice steady. "You're not the first person to underestimate an old man with nothing left to lose." She flinched, barely, but I saw it. Then she handed me the folder. "Last chance. Sign the compliance acknowledgement and we can grandfather in your property with minimal adjustments. Keep your cabin, keep your pride." I took it, leafed through. Legalese, charts, a map that showed my land inside a dotted red line, and in the corner, my name, misspelled. I folded the folder, handed it back. "You put my name on something without asking. That was your first mistake. Assuming I'd accept it, that was your last." She left, but I knew this wasn't over. That night, I sat in the workshop trying to calm my thoughts. The dogs curled at my feet, the old radio playing soft blues. And that's when I remembered something. My father used to say, if someone tries to claim what's yours, don't just defend it. Make it unmistakable that it was never theirs to begin with. I stared at the barn wall, the bare planks, the empty space above the workbench. Then I grabbed a can of paint. By morning, there'd be no mistaking who this land belonged to. And what I painted, well, let's just say it made sure everyone driving past that road knew one thing. This fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The paint dried fast in the morning heat, thick black letters across the old barn wall. "This land is claimed. Family-owned, not for sale." Big, bold, and impossible to ignore. Drivers slowed down to stare. One even honked. I stood beside it like a sentry, arms crossed, waiting. Not for applause, just for the next punch. Because when someone like Karen gets embarrassed, she doesn't retreat. She reloads. I didn't have to wait long. Late afternoon, I heard the crunch of tires again. This time, it wasn't her. It was a courier van. The driver handed me a large envelope, made me sign for it. Return address, Regional Legal Services Group. Inside, a cease and desist letter, 6 pages of legal threats, citations, and deadlines, accusations of defamation, obstruction of community operations, and something called malicious resistance to integration, whatever that meant. At the bottom was the kicker. If I didn't remove the gate reinforcements and signage within 72 hours, the Homeowner Association would file for an emergency injunction with the county court. I sat on the porch and read the damn thing 3 times. Then I just laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly Karen, passive-aggressive wrapped in legal jargon. Still, it shook me more than I wanted to admit. You ever feel like the ground under you's starting to shift, and you're the only one who didn't get the warning? That night, I couldn't sleep, kept thinking about what they'd do next. I'd always handled things with a handshake and a look, never needed lawyers or courtrooms. Now it felt like I was playing a game where I didn't even know the rules. I called up a man named George, old friend of my dad's. Used to be a judge before he got sick of it and retired to grow tomatoes. He picked up on the second ring. "Took you long enough to call," he said. "I didn't want to drag you into this." "I saw the video. Whole town has. You're not dragging anyone, son. You're leading." He told me to come by the next day, bring every paper I had. George's place was tucked behind an orchard. We sat at his kitchen table while his wife brought us lemonade. He spread the documents out like a battlefield map. "See this?" he said, pointing to Karen's cease and desist. "Looks official, but it's built on sand, all smoke and bluster." "Doesn't feel like bluster," I muttered. "That's because they're counting on you to fold. Most people do. But they made a mistake here. This claim," he tapped the map, "relies on you being absent. But you've got presence now. Online, in the county, in the community. You're not just a guy with a cabin anymore. You're a story." He paused, leaned back, and studied me. "But that also means they'll push harder. She won't want to lose this fight in public." He was right. I could feel it. By the time I got home, someone had spray painted over the barn sign. Red streaks, the word liar in big dripping letters, a broken bottle on the driveway. This wasn't just pressure, it was personal now. I stood there in the dusk, dogs pacing behind me, and for the first time, I felt it, that creeping edge of doubt. Like maybe they could take this from me. Not all at once, but inch by inch, paper by paper, lie by lie. I didn't eat dinner, didn't turn on the lights, just sat in the dark and listened to the wind hitting the porch screen. Have you ever felt like you were losing the fight before it even started? I thought about my wife, the evenings we used to spend out here, watching the sun slip behind the hills, her laugh, soft but certain. She always believed in standing your ground, quietly, firmly. No yelling, no threats, just truth, repeated until it couldn't be ignored. And maybe that's what this needed. Not another sign, not another video. Something older, deeper. The next morning, I went into the attic, dusted off a box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were my father's journals, his land agreements, survey notes, correspondence with the forestry board. All handwritten, all dated, all meticulous. And taped inside the back cover of one of them, an old letter from the county clerk confirming the family's retention of title outside all subdivisions. It was countersigned, filed, stamped. Undeniable. I called George. "Looks like I've got a royal flush," I said. "You sure?" "As sure as I am that she's not ready for what comes next." And neither was I, if I'm being honest. Because that letter didn't just prove I owned the land. It proved that Karen had committed something worse than overreach. She'd built her power on a lie. And now, I had the match, and the barn was already soaked in kerosene. I didn't sleep much after finding that letter, just kept running my fingers over the paper, tracing every word like it was scripture. That signature at the bottom, it was like a ghost reaching out from the past to remind me, "You're not crazy. This land really is yours." The next morning, I met George outside the county records office. He'd shaved, wore a jacket, even brought a briefcase, which I hadn't seen him carry since the Clinton administration. We didn't schedule an appointment. We just walked in. The clerk behind the glass had a polished smile and a tone that said she didn't get paid enough for this. George slid the letter across the counter. "We're here to confirm standing ownership on parcel 14G, he said. She took one look at the document and blinked. "That's quite old. Stamped, signed, and backed by the 1948 Forestry Easement Act," he added. She disappeared into the back for a good 20 minutes. When she returned, she had a supervisor with her. They reviewed the paperwork together like it was radioactive. Eventually, the supervisor looked up at me. This overrides the provisional HOA zoning request, he said. Just like that. I don't know if you've ever felt vindication, not satisfaction, not relief, but that sharp electric moment when the world finally says, "You were right." It was like ice water pouring down my back. I nodded, thanked them both, and left before my knees could buckle. George clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You've got the sword. Now use it." I drove straight to a copy shop, printed 20 laminated versions of the letter and a highlighted clause from the Forestry Act. Then I got to work. By dusk, every corner of my property had a new signpost. Not angry, not threatening, just the facts. Family property. Excluded from subdivisions. Per county records, 1948. That should have been the kill shot. But Karen, she didn't flinch. She adapted. 2 days later, I came back from a supply run in town and froze. The gate was wide open, wells cut clean, sign ripped off, trash scattered across the driveway, beer cans, fast food bags, cigarette butts. And the worst part? My barn door was half off the hinges. One of the dogs was limping, favoring his back leg. I called out. The other dog came running from the woods, shaking, tail between his legs. I dropped to my knees, checked them both over. No major wounds, thank God, but they'd been terrified. Inside the barn, it was worse. My father's old woodworking bench, smashed, the filing cabinet with land records, emptied and soaked. Someone had urinated on the floor. They hadn't come to steal. They'd come to break. You ever come home and realize someone tried to erase you? I sat on the porch steps with my hands shaking, staring at the empty road, and in that moment, I'll admit, I almost gave in. Almost. Because this wasn't just Karen anymore. She'd sent someone, or looked the other way while someone else did her dirty work. Either way, this was war. But here's what she didn't know. I'd already made digital backups of every document, photos, videos, copies in the cloud, on flash drives, even mailed to George just in case. So I did what I had to do. I cleaned up, reinforced the gate again, this time with steel mesh behind the bars, new locks, rebuilt the barn door, fed the dogs, checked their paws, gave them steak from the freezer. And then I posted a second video. No voiceover, no music, just a slow pan across the wreckage, the gate, the trash, the broken bench, the hurt dog limping across frame. Captioned it, "They opened the gate. This is what they brought in." By sunrise, it had over 10,000 views. And one comment stood out. "I know who did it. I'll talk. Meet me off Ridge Road. Bring no one." No name, no profile picture. Just a message. I stared at it a long time. And then I grabbed my coat. Because if someone out there wanted to talk, I was damn ready to listen. The gravel crunched under my tires like bones. Ridge Road was mostly forgotten, more weeds than road, with gullies so deep they could swallow a bumper. I left the truck idling beneath a dying pine and walked the last 50 yards with nothing but a flashlight and a pocket knife. Not smart, maybe, but I needed answers. The figure was already there, sitting on a fallen log, hoodie pulled low. I kept my distance. "You the one who messaged me?" He nodded, didn't stand, just tossed something my way. It clinked when it hit the dirt. A key, marked with a tag. HOA access box, de 12. "I used to work for him," he said, voice low. "Maintenance, part-time. Karen gave me cash to clean up the trail behind your barn. Told me it was abandoned. Said you left months ago." I didn't say a word. But when I showed up, man, you had dogs, tools, a fire going in the stove. That's not abandoned. That's lived in. So I refused. Told her to find someone else. I crouched slowly, picked up the key. He rubbed his hands together, nervous. Next thing I know, my hours get cut. Then I hear some guys from a nearby firm got hired under the table. They don't ask questions. They just do damage. "Did she order them to break in?" I asked. He looked up, eyes heavy. "All I know is they left bragging. Said you wouldn't be so proud after this." I exhaled, cold air, slow steam. "Why are you telling me now?" He hesitated, then pulled something from his pocket. A printed copy of my dog limping in the barn. The frame from the video, folded, worn. "I got a dog just like that, German Shepherd mix. Saved my kid from a snake once." I nodded, respect. "I can't prove she said the words," he said. "But she knew, and you're not the only one she's squeezed. You're just the first who didn't fold." I thanked him. He stood, pulled the hood tighter. "One more thing," he added. "The HOA main office, their server is in box Comms 12. That key unlocks the gate and the comms relay. You didn't get it from me." And just like that, he disappeared into the brush. I drove home slow. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced, thought, then walked out to the porch, sat in the dark, and weighed what I had. One key, one name, and one shot at ending this without ever stepping into a courtroom. Because if Karen built her web on power, reputation, and silence, then I was going to pull every single thread. By noon the next day, I'd found the relay box. Small shed tucked behind the HOA's flower garden near the community center. No cameras, just a rusty padlock. Key slid in like it belonged there. Inside, a dusty server rack, power cables, router lights blinking slow and steady. Mounted to the wall was a steel cabinet labeled HOA Digital Files, Private. No password, just a physical drive plugged into a decades-old computer with an admin account still logged in, like they thought no one would dare come close. I didn't steal anything. I took photos, dozens. Karen's name on invoices, signed for payments to contractor partners. Work orders for remote lot inspections. Requests for temporary asset control. But the gold was buried deeper. A memo from her personal email, sent to a board member. Subject: strategy for cabin parcel conversion. Body: he's been off-grid too long. If we file now, we can claim neglect. Push through in 2 weeks. If he resists, we'll have leverage. That was it, the nail in her coffin. I printed the screenshots, watermarked them, and loaded everything into a new video. I didn't speak. Just let the document speak for me. Footage of the destroyed barn, the hurt dogs, then the memos, the payments, the email. Caption: they thought no one would look. I did. I hit upload and let the silence carry the weight. Within hours, comments started rolling in. People from other neighborhoods, former HOA members, folks with similar stories. And somewhere in there, a name I recognized. "This is Karen's third property abuse scandal. I have proof. Want it? Let's talk." It was happening. The web was unraveling. And I had one more thread to pull. The messages didn't stop. By sunrise, my inbox looked like a confessional. Folks from 3 counties deep shared stories. About Karen, about other HOA heads, about intimidation, lies, fake inspections. Some wrote paragraphs. Others just said, "I thought I was the only one." But one message hit different. It came from a man named Harold. Said he used to be HOA president in a neighboring town before Karen persuaded the board to dissolve and merge with hers. Attached was a folder, photos, receipts, copies of reports that had mysteriously vanished. And in the middle of it all, a resignation letter. From Karen. Dated 4 years ago. Never filed, never made public. In it, she admitted to conflicts of interest, misuse of funds, and stepping down to avoid reputational harm. But she never stepped down. She just changed zip codes. You ever realize your enemy isn't just crooked? They've been playing dead while pulling every string? I called George. "Tell me what I'm holding." After a pause, he said, "You're holding a torch and a lot of dry brush." I asked him what would happen if I went public, not just with the cabin mess, but with all of it. Every memo, every dollar trail, every shady transfer and silent victim. He was quiet a long time. Finally, he said, "She'll burn, but so will everything she built. That HOA won't survive it. You ready for that?" I looked out at the lake, my dog snoozing on the porch, the barn, patched and quiet. The answer was already inside me. I'm not trying to hurt anyone innocent, but I won't protect the guilty. So I called in every favor I had left. A buddy from my Army days ran an online talk show, local reach, big mouth. I sent him everything, all the files, all the photos, and a letter of my own. I'm not a victim, I'm just done being quiet. The show went live the next night, 30 minutes of evidence, names, and questions. No accusations, just facts, just light. And sometimes, that's all it takes. The fallout was fast. Karen didn't show up to the HOA office the next morning, didn't return calls. Her personal number went dark. By noon, the remaining board members had scheduled an emergency meeting. I wasn't invited. Didn't need to be. Because by then, residents had started gathering outside her front yard, silent. Some held copies of my sign. This land is claimed. Some carried lawn chairs. They weren't angry. They were done. Done with fear. Done with silence. Someone even spray painted across the HOA building wall. Not yours. The next day I got a letter, hand-delivered. No return address, just a folded page. The association hereby acknowledges the independent and exempt status of the property located at Lot 14G and relinquishes any and all administrative, financial, or structural claims to said parcel. No apology, no name. Didn't need it. You ever watch a bully walk away without a word? That's the loudest confession you'll ever get. I stood on the porch that night, beer in hand, dog at my feet. Same spot where this started, same boots, same silence. But everything felt different. Not just because I'd won, because I hadn't backed down. Not once. So if you're watching this on Karenology, yeah, that's what they're calling it now, you already know the moral, but here's mine. No one takes what's yours unless you let them. And sometimes the only sign you need is the one that says, I'm still here. That's all I ever wrote. That's all they needed to read.